Hello from Birmingham. Thank you for reading the London Cozy Mysteries books and for signing up to my listeners club. I'm here to tell you a little bit more about Zaf Williams from the London Cozy Mysteries books and about his sister Connie, who's going to be getting her own series. Now, if you've read my D.I. Zoe Finch books, you'll have met both Zaf and Connie. Connie is one of the main characters in the Zoe Finch books, and she is a detective constable in Zoe's team. And Zaf gets his first mention because Connie asked him for some advice on a case. So he first appears in Zoe Finch book 1, Deadly Wishes, and it's when they're looking into a painting that's been stolen and Connie calls Zaf for some advice. So here's his first appearance. Zoe flung her bag onto her desk and sank into her chair. The sleep deprivation was taking its toll. She checked her watch, 3 p.m, hours before she could go home and collapse into bed. There's been a development, said Mo. Oh yes? Art theft arrest. Guy called Simon Adams, goes by the name of Stick. Organised crime brought him in an hour ago. An hour ago, she'd been at the industrial estate in Selly Oak. He took the painting from Jackson's study, she said. We think so. He had a Diebenkorn, a big one. David's going to show it to Mrs. Jackson. Ask if she recognises it. It's a valuable one, said Connie. I checked with Zaf. Zaf? My brother. So that's Zaf's first mention. And in case you're wondering who all those people are, D.I. Zoe Finch is the main character from the Zoe Finch books and the senior investigating officer and leader of the team. D.S. Mo Uddin is her sidekick and best friend. He's a major character in the Zoe Finch books, and he also appears in my McBride and Tanner series. Connie is Zaf's sister and a detective constable in the team, and Zaf, who is mentioned there, is her brother and one of the stars of the London Cozy Mysteries books. And David, who is mentioned there, is Detective Superintendent David Randall, and he's a bad un. You'll read a lot more about him if you read the Zoe Finch books. So later on, Zaf gets a bigger role in the books. He starts dating Nicholas, Zoe's son, in book 2, Deadly Choices. So here is a passage which introduces that relationship. The house was quiet. Zoe went to the fridge, hoping Nicholas would have cooked and left her something. Of the two of them, he was the only one with culinary skills. She rifled through the cans of Pepsi Max, bottles of beer and cartons of leftover takeaway. Nothing. Sorry, Mum. Nicholas came into the kitchen. I was out with Zaf. His mum cooked. That's nice. Zaf was Connie's younger brother and Nicholas's new boyfriend. Zoe had only met him once, but she'd used his knowledge of modern art in a previous case. It was. No sign of Connie, though. You got her working overtime. Shit. Zoe grabbed her phone. Voicemail. Connie, it's Zoe. I don't know if you're still in the office, but this is me telling you to go home. I need you to get some rest so we can carry on in the morning. Hope you get this. Oops. Nicholas opened the fridge and grabbed a bottle of beer. He handed her a can of Pepsi. Connie's a hard worker. We'll get to know that much better. And later in Deadly Choices, Zaf gives us a preview of how fond he is of cats, which you'll know well if you've read about him and Gus. Obviously, Zaf isn't Gus's biggest fan, that's Newton Crombie, but Zaf likes to give Gus the odd tickle behind the ear. So he meets Zoe's new cat, Yoda, and gets very excited about it. And here's the passage from the book. Zoe picked the cat carrier up and carried it into the living room. Let's see what Nicholas makes of you, she thought. She froze as she entered the room. Nicholas was on the settee, twisting round to look at her. Zaf was next to him, and opposite them, on the threadbare armchair, was Zoe's mum. Zoe flicked a glance at her mum, then back to Nicholas. She walked to the back of the settee and ruffled his hair. I got you something. She plonked the cage on the back of the settee. A kitten, Zaf cried. He sprang up and threw himself around Nicholas, reaching for the cage. She let him take it and open the door. The kitten cowered inside. It had had enough of new people for one day, she reckoned. She didn't blame it. Nicholas, can you help me in the kitchen, please? She asked. She ignored her mum. Nicholas looked at Zaf and shrugged. Zaf grinned at him, pulling the kitten out of its hiding place. So you get a glimpse there of Zoe's relationship with her mum, which is not good. And Zaf, he's a cat lover right from the start. But then things get properly serious for Zaf. In book 3 of the Zoe Finch series, Deadly Desires, he finds himself with Nicholas being chased by the killer who Zoe is trying to track down. Nicholas felt a rush of air as a bus approached. Zaf was looking over Nicholas's shoulder, watching the railway bridge, checking for a train. Nicholas turned to follow his gaze, then turned back to find Zaf gone. He frowned. Zaf? He heard a shout. The bus flew past, oblivious to them. Zaf? Nick! Zaf's voice sounded distant, muffled. Nick! Nicholas scanned the street. With the bus gone, the area around the bus stop was dark. There was movement to his left, shapes shifting in the dark. Zaf? He felt something large and soft hit him. Run! Zaf's hand grappled with his, then held on. What? Nicholas let himself be dragged along. His feet skittered on the icy pavement, and his brain struggled to keep up. Didn't you see? Zaf hissed as he ran. See what? That guy. He panted as they rounded a corner. He decked me. I think we lost him. Nicholas widened his eyes. The street seemed to have come to life, adrenaline making everything clearer than it had been. He could hear footsteps behind them. He's behind us, he whispered. And you'll notice that my narration of that isn't anywhere near as good as Jan Kramer's. So if you get these books in audiobook, you'll find that Jan does the voices and the accents much better for Nicholas and Zaf and all the rest of the crew. But that gives you a bit of a hint. I'm not going to tell you everything about what develops from there because it might spoil the book. But yeah, it's not the best day of poor Zaf's life. And then Connie finds out that Zaf is in danger and she gets over emotional. So Ian Osman, who is a detective sergeant in the team, at this point he is Zoe's second in command. He's working with her. And he tells Connie to get off the case. And here's the section from Deadly Desires. Ian watched Zoe run out of the office. He called after her, but she was too focused on getting to the vets, on helping Rodri. More interested in dashing around after her precious DCs than in doing her job as SIO. He turned back to Petra and Connie. They both looked back at him. Petra hesitant, Connie pushing determination into her face. You need to go home, Connie, he said. You heard what the boss said. She shook her head. She said I could stay. You need my expertise. Everyone's expendable, Constable. I'm your senior officer, and I'm telling you to go home. We'll discover later in the Zoe Finch series that Ian Osman isn't really all that nice a guy. And Connie doesn't have any truck with this. She goes home, but instead of actually going home, she leaves the office. She finds Nicholas, and the two of them start conspiring to track Zaf down. So they go to a local cafe, and they get their phones out. And here's the section from the book. Connie put a mug in front of Nicholas and collapsed into her seat. It was a latte, frothy milk threatening to spill over the top. He hadn't asked for coffee, but she seemed to have decided what was best for him. That'll warm you up, she said. You're not my mum. I'm like your big sister, she replied. A cloud passed over her face. He picked up the coffee and slurped up some of the milk. She shot him a look, as if to say, drink nicely. He grimaced. Right, she said. Let's find this bastard. She bent over her phone, her own cup of weak tea untouched in front of her. I'll help, Nicholas said. Tell me his name. And that is a key scene in Deadly Desires, and I'm not going to tell you how it turns out. But I think you can guess that Zaf is found and lives to tell the tale, because he eventually gets his job at Chartwell and Crouch and becomes friends with Diana and Gus and Newton and all the rest of them. And after all his adventures with Diana and Gus, because you've now read the entire series of the London Cozy Mysteries, what's going to happen to Zaf? Well, he's going to be returning in a new series. He will have a part in a series for his sister, so DC Connie Williams, who's now a DS. So Detective Sergeant Connie Williams is now going to be the star of a new series set in Birmingham, police procedural novels, and Connie by now has had plenty of time to become an experienced detective. She's no longer just the geek. So she's heading up aspects of investigations, she's taking on responsibility, and then a murder investigation comes quite close to home because she's moved to King's Heath with her boyfriend, who's a member of the FSI team, forensic investigator. And a body is found very near her home, and she becomes part of the investigating team. And that will be the first book in the Connie Williams series. So that will be out in the summer of 2025. Zaf will have a role in it. I'm not quite sure yet what that role will be and how closely involved he'll be, but he's not going to be leaving London permanently, and he's certainly not going to be splitting up with Alexi, because I like their happy ending. But I will be in touch with you as soon as the audiobook is available to pre-order, and then you'll be able to be among the first to read it. Happy listening!